The trade talk deadline for Canada and U.S. is next week, and Prime Minister Mark Carney has taken off to Italy for a little R&R. Why would he do that? Well, to help us figure out the actions of our overworked leader is Toronto Sun political columnist and regular BCN contributor Brian Lilley. Here he is. Welcome back, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Jeanette.
Excellent. Okay, Brian, the headline on your latest column is Ciao Canada, PM jets to Italy as trade war clock ticks. So why is Mark Carney vacationing in Italy at such a crucial point in
Ciao
trade
Canada.
With next week's deadline? I didn't say that right. Ciao Canada.
Well, I do live in an area with an awful lot of Italians, and I grew up in Hamilton, where I like to say I'm not Italian, but I'm from Hamilton, so it's almost the same thing.
Right.
Look, is he entitled to a vacation? Yes. Do I begrudge politicians a vacation? No. Any politician worth their salt is working longer hours than you and I. And like you, Jeanette, work long hours, put in a lot. So many Canadians do. But politicians are a different type of animal. I've been around them a long time. Anyone that's going to be successful, anyone that's going to get reelected is going to put in more hours than the average bear. And so, yeah, Mark Carney's been doing that. Whether you like his policies or not is another matter, but he's putting in a lot of hours. Definitely more than Justin Trudeau, who liked to sleep, didn't like to be bothered, liked to take his vacations. And so Carney's office put out this odd statement to reporters last week stating that he had personal commitments and would be on reduced hours. They didn't call it a vacation. But then they also said that he was, cleared by the ethics commissioner. All very strange. And so he's jetted off to Italy, it turns out, at a time when the trade talks are at a very key point. The problem with this is the optics. It's not whether he has a vacation, deserves a vacation, doesn't deserve a vacation. It's what are the optics when we've got a whole bunch of new tariffs that amount to about $28 billion of new tariffs on Canadian goods coming into effect next week, unless we come to terms with the Americans on some key points. And he goes off to Italy? Like, where is he? Is it somebody's, rich guy's Tuscan villa? We just don't know. And that's part of why this is a problem. It's, as I said, it's not that these guys aren't entitled to a vacation, but in politics, optics is often reality, and this is not a good look for him.
Mm-hmm. Maybe he should have gone to Florida near Mar-a-Lago. And
maybe he should have gone to Harrington Lake. He should have gone to Harrington Lake, the vacation property that we have spent millions of dollars renovating over the last decade, that belongs to the government of Canada, that is one of the most beautiful spots in Eastern Canada for someone to relax and unwind. They can bring in the Italian wine and the Aperol Spritz for him.
Exactly. And then, Brian, despite Carney being in Italy, you are reporting that the talks have improved. So what can you tell us?
So the talks now are being described to me by various people in various industries with various governments as substantive. That's a good thing, because recently you could not describe them as substantive. I know the Prime Minister tried to make it sound like they were, and he said, we've put in comprehensive plans. We've put forward proposals to the Americans. And the Americans said, no, what the Canadians have been doing is saying, we'd like to talk about talking some more, about talking, about potentially talking.
It's like planning a meeting a meeting to plan a meeting to plan.
Exactly, a meeting to plan a meeting.
Yeah.
And I heard that from U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, and I'm always going to take what the Americans say with a grain of salt. And so I reached out to my Canadian contacts, and they said, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. And we're not putting forward any key proposals. Now we are. We are trading proposals back and forth. Things are on the table. Is it something that's going to work? Well, we'll have to wait and see. There's some things that are not going to make certain premiers happy, but at least we're moving in the direction of substantial talks, because as I said, $28 billion of extra tariffs, that's going to hurt at a certain point.
Definitely. Brian, the impact of these new tariffs isn't evenly spread across the country. And in fact, you are saying that Alberta will barely even notice. Why are you saying that?
About 1% of Alberta's exports are going to be hit by these tariffs. You compare that to British Columbia, where it's about 13%, Quebec, where it's about 11%, Ontario, I think about 10.5%. Alberta is one of the lowest provinces for impact. Newfoundland and Labrador is 0.4% of their exports to the U.S. will be hit. Prince Edward Island, which, like, look, that's the size of a neighborhood in Calgary, population-wise. It's about 0.4%. But Alberta, it's about 1%. Next door in Saskatchewan, it's 1.2%. So it's, look, the Americans were very smart with how they decided to impose these extra tariffs. You've got things like the extra 50% tariff on Canadian booze that is going to be put in place because of the decision by 8 provinces, other than Alberta and Saskatchewan, to ban American alcoholic products from their government liquor stores or even to be imported by private liquor stores. So you've got that going on. And the Americans said, okay, we're going to put 50% on that. Now, that's most for Canadian exports, that's mostly going to hit things like Crown Royal, which is going to come out of Gimli, Manitoba, or Valleyfield, Quebec, a little bit in Ontario. It's going to hit Canadian Club. Not so much Alberta Premium, made in High River, which, by the way, excellent rye. I'm not paid to give a plug to them, but it is a great product. They don't do as much export business as Canadian Club or Crown Royal. So the disparity is different. And the Americans looked at where can we achieve maximum pressure points. It's very similar to what we've tried to do before in applying tariffs on American products. Where is Trump politically vulnerable? We'll apply tariffs there. The Americans looked and said, where's Carney politically vulnerable? So the tariffs hit BC, Alberta, Ontario. Not only his voting base, but his industrial base. And that's going to be a major hit. So Alberta, you guys aren't going to notice. Saskatchewan, not going to notice. Manitoba, a little bit. That's the main place for Crown Royal to be made. And I want to point out, Texas buys more Crown Royal than all of Canada. It is a big product down there. About 50% of the spirits made in Canada. We don't export a lot of beer to the U.S. We don't export a lot of wine, but we export a lot of spirits. And about 50% of what is produced in this country is sent to the U.S. The rest is for domestic consumption and export to the rest of the world.
Interesting. Yeah, Crown Royal, and they love their Canadian Club as well.
Yeah.
CC and Coke.
The CC is made in Windsor, Ontario.
There you go. Wow. Speaking of Ontario, okay, so 2 Ontario MPs have announced that they are saying bye-bye, leaving their positions in the last week. So one is a Conservative, one's a Liberal. So why are so many people leaving, Brian?
It's a variety of reasons. You've had 7 MPs have left the Conservative Party, but not all of them have left government. We've had several floor crossers, as we're well aware. 4 Conservative MPs crossed the floor. One took an appointment to the Senate. That'd be Richard Martel, whose riding of Chicoutimi is now in a by-election that's up for grabs, and the Liberals are probably going to win unless they cave on supply management and these talks with the Americans, in which point they lose. So, that'll tell you where the talks will go. But we had Kathy Wagenthal out of, I believe the riding is Yorkton, not York, Yorkton in Saskatchewan. She's decided to leave by the end of the month. But the latest 2 are Larry Brock, a Conservative MP from Brantford, city where the telephone was invented, and Sean Chen, who is a Liberal MP from Scarborough, one of Toronto's East End suburbs. And like most Canadians, I had to Google who Sean Chen was, despite the fact that he's been an MP since 2015. He says that he was in a car accident last fall. It makes it difficult for him to travel. Some online accounts like Andy Lee have pointed out, well, you've been flying over to China and doing photo ops with people there, so why is it so difficult to go to Ottawa? we'll have to find out more to that story. Larry Brock, the Conservative MP from Brantford, he has decided that he's going to go back to being a Crown prosecutor. It's the type of Crown prosecutor that I want out there. He's going to be a tough one. He has led the charge for the Conservatives on pushing for criminal justice reform, especially bail reform. But he was on a leave of absence from his previous job as a Crown. He had to decide, is he going to go back to being a prosecutor, where he feels now that he could do more good, or is he going to stay as an opposition backbench MP? He decided to opt for going back. And the Liberals think that they can steal this seat. That's why they actually tried to offer Larry Brock, or dangle in front of him, the idea that he could get a judicial appointment if he stepped down last spring. He did not take them up on that offer. I don't expect him to get a judicial appointment anytime soon. And if it does come, it'll come from the province, not from the federal government, which is feeling slighted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're getting a little bit short on time here, but I want to get the last couple of questions in here. So the latest poll for Post Media shows some interesting and, for Pierre Poilievre, troubling views of Canadians. So even when presented with the same policy, more Canadians, it seems, trust Mark Carney to implement those policies than Pierre Poilievre. So what can you tell us?
Well, so, look, you've seen a lot of polls out there showing between a 4-point lead for the Liberals and a 20-point lead for the Liberals and everything in between. Ignore those. It's the middle of summer. Those are crazy polls. But this one is interesting. I've talked to some polling experts that say, look, the Prime Minister of the day is always going to poll higher than the opposition leader. But on things like expanding Canadian energy, oil exports, natural gas exports, more pipelines, dealing with the immigration system, Mark Carney has a significant lead over Pierre Poilievre. This is a poll of 1,500 people. And for these questions on 6 policy issues where the Liberals and Conservatives are fairly close, they split it in half and they asked people, do you trust Mark Carney on this issue? And they asked the other half, do you trust Pierre Poilievre on this issue? On issues like speeding up the execution of major infrastructure and energy projects, 64% trust Mark Carney, 51% trust Pierre Poilievre. On immigration and fixing that, 69% trust Mark Carney and 56% trust Pierre Poilievre. That's a 13-point gap. On dealing with Donald Trump and trade, 50% think Mark Carney can get a better deal. Just 38% think that Pierre Poilievre can. This is a problem for Pierre Poilievre. It shows that there's a lack of trust in him, but it does also show that Canadians aren't judging Mark Carney based on reality or outcomes. They're judging him based on their feelings. And eventually that may change.
Mm-hmm. So, some of these polls even show the Liberals having a 20-point lead. So you're saying
I don't buy it.
You don't buy it. You don't believe it. Okay. Unfortunately, Brian, we're out of time here. I had another question for you, but we'll save it for next time. Brian Lilley, thanks so much for joining us once again, Toronto Sun political columnist. We always love hearing your thoughts with us.
Talk soon.